5 ways to deal with people who don't respect you. What Freud would say. Do you feel like some people just don't take you seriously, like no matter what you do? Certain individuals treat you as if you're invisible, interrupt you constantly, or dismiss your opinions without a second. What? Here's what's fascinating. Freud would tell you that the problem isn't just with them. It's also in how you react, often unconsciously, based on patterns that started forming in your childhood. And once you understand this, everything changes. Before we dive deep into the mind, make sure to subscribe if you want to understand yourself better and discover what Freud uncovered about human behavior. Hit that notification bell, because we're about to explore some uncomfortable truths about respect, relationships, and why some people walk all over us while others command natural authority. First way, why disrespect hurts so much. The ego under attack. Let's start with a simple question. Why does disrespect sting so badly? Why can a stranger's dismissive comment ruin your entire day? Freud would say it's because disrespect directly attacks what he called your ego. Not ego in the sense of being arrogant, but ego as in your sense of self, your identity, your psychological survival mechanism. Think of your ego like the CEO of your mind. It's constantly working to maintain your self-image, to prove you're valuable, competent, worthy of love and respect. When someone disrespects you, they're essentially telling your ego, you don't matter, you're not important enough for basic courtesy. But here's where it gets really interesting. Freud discovered that some people are more vulnerable to these ego attacks than others. And it's not about being weak, it's about what he called narcissistic wounds. Imagine your psyche as a house. Some people have thick, solid walls built from childhood experiences of being valued, heard, and respected. When disrespect comes their way, it bounces off like rain on a strong roof. But others have cracks in their psychological walls, maybe from a critical parent who never validated them, a teacher who humiliated them in front of the class, or peers who consistently excluded them. When disrespect hits these vulnerable spots, it doesn't just sting, it reopens old wounds and floods the system with pain. That feels way bigger than the current situation deserves. You know, when someone makes a small dismissive comment and you spend the next 3 hours obsessing over it. That's not about the comment. That's about every time in your life someone made you feel small, worthless, or invisible. Your unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between past and present. It just screams danger, not safe, must offend. Second way, the pattern trap. Why you keep attracting disrespectful people. Here's an uncomfortable truth that Freud would want you to face. If you consistently find yourself surrounded by people who don't respect you, you're unconsciously participating in creating that dynamic. But wait, you might be thinking, I don't choose for people to be rude to me. And consciously, you're absolutely right. But unconsciously, that's a different story. Freud called this the repetition compulsion, our unconscious drive to recreate familiar patterns even when they're painful. It's like your psyche is stuck on repeat, trying to master old traumas by putting you in similar situations over and over again. Let me give you an example. Say you grew up with a parent who was emotionally unavailable, critical, or dismissive. Your child brain learned love means working hard to get attention from someone who doesn't give it easily. Respect is something I have to earn through perfect behavior, Now, as an adult, you unconsciously seek out relationships and situations that feel familiar. You might find yourself drawn to bosses who are impossible to please, friends who take more than they give, or romantic partners who are emotionally distant. It's not that you enjoy being disrespected. It's that disrespect feels like home. Your unconscious mind thinks, if I can just get this person to respect me, maybe I can finally heal the wound from childhood. But here's the tragedy. You can't heal the past by recreating it. You just keep getting hurt in new ways. Freud also noticed something else. People with unresolved feelings of inadequacy often give off subtle signals that invite disrespect. It might be in your body language, the way you shrink when entering a room, how quickly you apologize for things that aren't your fault, or how you laugh nervously when someone says something that actually bothers you. These signals are like invisible signs saying I don't value myself highly, so you probably don't need to either. And unfortunately, some people, especially those with their own psychological issues, pick up on these signals and exploit them. Third way, the defense mechanisms that keep you stuck. No. Let's talk about something crucial, how your own mind might be sabotaging your efforts to command respect. Freud identified several psychological defense mechanisms that, while they might protect you from immediate pain, actually make the problem worse in the long run. Defense mechanism 1, rationalization. This is when you create logical sounding explanations for why someone's disrespectful behavior is actually okay. You tell yourself things like, he's just stressed at work, she doesn't mean it personally. That's just how they are. I'm probably being too sensitive. While some of these might contain grains of truth, rationalization becomes a problem when you use it to avoid dealing with patterns of genuine disrespect. Your rational mind creates these explanations to protect you from the pain of acknowledging that someone is treating you badly. But by constantly making excuses for others, you train them that their behavior has no consequences. Defense mechanism 2, repression. This is when you push your anger and hurt so far down that you convince yourself you don't really feel it. You become the nice person who never gets upset, never complains, never rocks the boat. But here's what Freud understood. Repressed emotions don't disappear. They go underground and start affecting you in other ways. You might develop anxiety, depression, physical symptoms, or explosive anger that seems to come out of nowhere. The energy you use to keep your real feelings buried is enormous, and it leaves you drained and powerless. Defense mechanism 3, reaction formation. This is perhaps the most subtle trap. It's when you respond to disrespect by becoming overly accommodating, overly helpful, overly nice. If someone treats you poorly, you double down on being sweet to them. If someone dismisses you, you work twice as hard to prove your worth. This might seem like taking the high road, but psychologically, it's often a way of denying your own anger and maintaining the fantasy that if you're just good enough, kind enough, useful enough, everyone will eventually treat you well. Unfortunately, people who lack empathy often interpret excessive niceness as weakness and exploit it further. Defense mechanism 4, identification with the aggressor. Sometimes, when we can't beat them, we unconsciously join them. You might find yourself becoming more cynical, more dismissive of others, more critical. It's as if your psyche decides, if I become like the people who hurt me, maybe I won't be vulnerable anymore. But this defense mechanism turns you into someone you don't really want to be, and it doesn't actually solve the underlying problem of not feeling worthy of respect. Fourth way, building a healthy ego, the foundation of self-respect. So how do you break these patterns? Freud would say it starts with understanding the difference between a healthy ego and a wounded one. A healthy ego doesn't need constant validation from others because it has a stable, internal sense of worth. It can handle criticism without crumbling, can disagree without attacking, and can set boundaries without feeling guilty. A wounded ego, on the other hand, is like a leaky bucket. No matter how much respect and validation you pour into it, it never feels full because the fundamental issue, the internal wounds, hasn't been addressed. The first step in building a healthy ego is what Freud called insight, becoming conscious of your unconscious patterns. You need to start noticing. How do you react when someone disrespects you? What stories do you tell yourself about why it's happening? What physical sensations come up in your body? What memories or emotions get triggered? This isn't about judging yourself. It's about becoming a detective of your own psyche. The more you understand your automatic reactions, the more choice you have in how you respond. The second step is understanding your superego, that inner voice that judges everything you do. For many people who struggle with respect issues, the superego is either the harsh, constantly criticizing and making them feel they deserve poor treatment, or to weak, providing no internal bound areas or standards a healthy superego gives. You clear internal guidelines about what behavior is acceptable and what isn't. It doesn't need to be angry or aggressive. It just needs to be firm and consistent. Think of it like this. If you had a good friend who was being treated disrespectfully, what would you tell them? You'd probably be clear, supportive, and protective. That's the voice of a healthy superego. The goal is to develop that same protective, caring voice toward yourself. Fifth way, 5 practical ways to command respect, the Freudian approach. Let's get into the 5 specific strategies that would make Freud proud approaches that work with your psychology, not against it. Strategy 1. Practice conscious responding instead of automatic reacting. When someone disrespects you, your first impulse might be to freeze, flee, attack, or people please. These are automatic reactions controlled by your unconscious mind. Instead, create what Freud would call a pause. Take a breath and ask yourself, what is my ego feeling right now? What old wound is getting triggered? What would my healthiest self do in this situation? This isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about creating space between the trigger and your response so you can choose actions that serve your long-term well-being, rather than just providing immediate emotional relief. Strategy 2. Use the power of interpretation. Freud was big on interpretation, looking beneath surface behavior to understand deeper motivations. When someone is consistently disrespectful, instead of taking it personally, try to understand what's really going on with them. People who habitually disrespect others are usually dealing with their own psychological issues, insecurity, narcissistic wounds, power struggles, or learned patterns from their own childhood. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but understanding it can help you respond more strategically. If someone is rude because they feel threatened by your competence, responding with excessive niceness might actually escalate their behavior. If Someone is dismissive because they're used to being the center of attention. Giving them that attention while also maintaining your boundaries might be more effective. Strategy 3. Develop what Freud called sublimation. Sublimation is taking raw, emotional energy and channeling it into something constructive. Instead of letting anger and hurt eat away at you, or exploding in ways that make you look unprofessional or unstable. Use that energy to fuel positive changes in your life. Channel your frustration into building skills that make you more confident and valuable, creating art, writing, or other forms of expression. Physical exercise that helps you feel powerful in your body. Strategic planning for how to improve your situation. When you sublimate negative emotions into constructive action, you not only feel better, you also become the kind of person who naturally commands respect because you're obviously doing important work on yourself. Strategy 4. Practice healthy narcissism. Freud understood that some degree of narcissism, self-love and self-regard, is actually healthy and necessary. The problem comes with excessive narcissism or with having too little. Healthy narcissism means believing you deserve basic respect and courtesy, taking pride in your accomplishments without needing to diminish others, setting boundaries without feeling guilty, advocating for yourself without being aggressive, recognizing your own value without needing constant external validation. If you struggle with respect issues, you might need to deliberately cultivate more self-regard. This feels uncomfortable at first. Your wounded psyche might tell you it's selfish or arrogant, but it's actually essential for psychological health. Strategy 5. Address the root through working through. This is the most important strategy, and it's what sets Freud's approach apart from surface-level advice. Working through means systematically addressing the deeper psychological patterns that make you vulnerable to disrespect. This might involve journaling about patterns in your relationships and where they might have originated, exploring your family dynamics and how they shaped your expectations about respect, working with a therapist to process old wounds and develop healthier patterns, practicing new behaviors in low-stakes situations before applying them to more challenging relationships. The goal isn't to become someone who never feels hurt by disrespect. That would actually be unhealthy. The goal is to develop enough inner stability that you can respond to disrespect from a place of choice rather than from old wounds. The path to genuine self-respect. Here's what Freud would want you to understand. The people who naturally command respect aren't necessarily the loudest, the most aggressive, or the most successful. They're the people who have done the inner work to heal their psychological wounds and develop genuine self-regard. When you know your own worth, not in an arrogant way, but in a deep, stable way, it shows in everything you do. Your body, language changes, your voice changes, the way you enter rooms, the way you disagree with people, the way you set boundaries. All of it shifts because you're operating from a foundation of genuine self-respect rather than from fear, old wounds, or the desperate need for external validation. This isn't a quick fix. Freud was honest about how long real psychological change takes. But every small step you take toward understanding your unconscious patterns, every moment you choose conscious responding over automatic reacting, every boundary you set from self-love rather than self-defense, it all adds up to profound transformation. The people who don't respect you now might not suddenly change, but new people will respond to you differently. And more importantly, you'll respond to disrespect from a place of strength rather than from a place of old wounds. Remember, respect isn't something you can demand from others, but self-respect is something you can absolutely develop within yourself. And when you have genuine self-respect, you naturally attract people who can see and honor your worth. So what do you think? Does this resonate with your experience? Have you noticed patterns in how you respond to disrespect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read everything and love hearing about your insights and breakthroughs. If this helps you understand yourself a little better, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into what Freud discovered about the human mind. And remember, the goal isn't to become someone who never gets disrespected. The goal is to become someone who handles disrespect with wisdom, strength, and self-compassion. Until next time, keep exploring your unconscious. There's always more to discover.